Right now, the biggest challenges for society are concerned with the recovery from the corona pandemic. First of all, we need to know more about the virus. We need to know about to get better treatment, to know about how the immunity against the virus works. And of course, we need to develop good vaccines. And a lot has already happened. Let us just hope that the vaccines will be working. But what is also needed is an economic recovery from after the virus. And in that respect, we need to take the opportunity for a green recovery after the pandemic. And in line, I would say, with the United Nations Agenda 2030 and the 17 sustainability goals. And they are very much about the climate change, about the environment, what needs to be done for the environment, and also about, say, health, clean water, equality, education, etc. In order to meet the challenges and be able to provide scientific advice, we must remember that we also need more research. We need applied research in order to solve the present problems, but we also need fundamental science, fundamental research in order to solve the problems of the future. And I think it's remarkable that the progress when it came to knowing about the virus was so rapid here. And that was just because we had a lot of general knowledge about viruses in general in medicine that helped this development. And this is something we must remember. Scientific evidence needs to have more impact in society. But this is something we need to argue for. Scientists need to argue for this because there is, so to say, no natural law saying that science advice is important for society. What we need to do is to explain how science works and why it is important. But I think that during this pandemic, the trust in science has increased because citizens, the general public, has been able to see how science and science advice are crucial. Fake news and pseudoscience are threats in society, and this is very dangerous for society. But science and scientific knowledge are different because in science you can give arguments for the fact. You can tell why something is true and explain that. There are, so to say, two pillars in science which are extremely important. One is the so-called peer review, which means that when you claim something in science, when you publish scientific results, other experts are scrutinizing and checking your claims before they are published. And we also have what is called the reproducibility, which means that other experts must be able to reproduce the results you claim that you have found. And these are two pillars which are different from what you have in pseudosciences, for example. But then I would also say that the political leaders are important. And today we actually have political leaders which have claims which are not based on science, but rather on fake news and pseudoscience. Activities which are aimed at overcoming the discrepancies between the citizens and science are extremely important. And what we need then is to engage the citizens in science. And we need to inform via lectures, social media, etc. But we also need to engage citizens in other ways in science, and also to be able to give citizens the opportunity to give their opinions. EASAC is doing this by, first of all, publishing reports which are mainly aimed for policymakers, but also more and more using social media and other types of sources to reach the citizens. I think there are actually several problems when scientists and policymakers work together. First of all, the scientific information that is conveyed to the policymakers need to be relevant, and this is not always the case. We have to remember that policymakers and scientists work in very different environments. Scientists quite often work with one problem during quite a long time, while the policymakers work very short time with many different items. I think that what is important is that we gain understanding of how the other parties work. C.P. Snow, who is a British physicist and author, he coined the expression two cultures, and that was originally meant for humanities and science, but he has also used it to compare the policymakers and scientists. And I think that we have very different cultures, and it's extremely important that we understand each other. And for this reason also, we need to work together very much. And in EASAC, we make reports that we hand over to the policymakers, but we also need to have better contact with the policymakers. It's important that science increase the impact of the work that we do. And what we particularly need to do is to be relevant. And it's not always that science provides the answers and the information that is relevant for a specific question. And this is very important, of course. Another factor which is, of course, extremely important is the communication between policymakers and scientists. And we need to understand each other, and we need to use a language which the other part is able to understand. And this is normally a language which is different from the one that we use within the scientific community. So among the reports that EASAC has produced, there are, I could mention particularly two that have gained quite a lot of impact. One is about neonicotinoids, that is a kind of insecticides that affect the ability of honeybees and also other types of bees to orient themselves. And this report has actually been instrumental when it comes to legislation. The other one is about forestry and the use of bioenergy. In particularly, EASAC is worried about the use of biopellets for producing electricity, something which is used increasingly in Europe and also in other parts of the world. And that actually contributes to more emissions of carbon dioxide than present technologies using coal. We can see that science can have a big impact in policy making, that science is important, and that science has gained trust from the citizens. The crisis has emphasized the need for scientists and science to make its voice heard, and also the need for scientists to work together to share results and data. But no, science has progressed very rapidly, and that has been impressive to see, but sometimes too rapid, because scientific results need to be scrutinized and checked, and sometimes there has not been enough time for that. And this is important for science to have confidence among policymakers as well as citizens. I just saw the other day that quite a lot of papers that have been published in scientific newspapers, scientific journals, have been retracted recently, papers connected to COVID-19. And the reason is certainly that progress has been too rapid and the peer review, the check of the results has been too rapid. It's important that policymakers realize that science advice is a crucial part of policymaking. For example, if you take the climate change, then science has very important contributions to make. But then we should, on the other hand, also remember that there are other topics where values are also important, sometimes even more important. Let me mention two extreme examples just to illustrate what I mean. And these are two topics that are presently under discussion in Sweden now. One is CCS, carbon capture and storage. And that is a topic where science and technology necessarily must have a lot of influence. The other extreme is assisted suicide, where science can have something to say, but my other values, moral and ethical values, are more important than scientific advice. Science academies are well suited to provide science advice for several reasons. First of all, the members of the academies are often among the best scientists within the different countries. They usually have a long tradition. They are trusted because of the scientific knowledge that is accumulated within the academies.